Katherine Piccinini, running for the U.S. House of Representatives here in California's 10th Congressional District against Mark DeSaulnier. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is the first time that we've met in person.
Yes.
And for people who don't know, we were actually running against each other in the primary. And we were both running against Mark DeSaulnier because we don't like the direction that the country was headed. And so I don't know how to feel about you because you were kind of my enemy, but then we had a common enemy. And I'm saying enemy to be a little bit, extravagant, but it's true. But it's true. We wanted to try to do something different, take the district in a different direction. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And I was trying to scour online to see if I could find any video or interviews of you previously. I wasn't able to find anything. So is this your first appearance?
No, but there's some that haven't posted yet.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because I was able to find, it was about a 6-second clip online of people holding your signs at the Danville parade. I think it was probably over the 4th of July. I don't know if you were there. I couldn't find you in the frame. Oh, you were there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe you were on camera previously.
We had our car, beautiful convertible.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you called me after the primary election, congratulating me on running.
Yes.
I thought that was very thoughtful of
Yes.
you.
I called each of the candidates, and I also went into Central Committee because I am a member, and the other candidate, Nolan, was a member.
Yeah.
And, so we kind of divided the committee. And I just wanted everybody to just sort of come together for unity because one goal is to beat the incumbent. And I kind of think of you and I as we see the same hill, we want to take the hill, and the name of the hill is freedom. We may go about it in a different way to take it, but we have that same goal. Whereas our opponent, he might call that hill something like control or lockdown or mandate. So he sees things differently than you and I do. I think bottom line, we do see things the same way.
Sure.
Just going about it maybe differently.
Sure. Okay, well, let's just start with a little bit of your personal background. I saw on your website that you have 4 kids and 5 grandkids. Yes. And are you all here in the district? Did you grow up here in the district?
I was born and raised in San Francisco. So are my children. Moved down the peninsula, Burlingame, and that's basically where they were raised. My children were raised with a law enforcement background. And so I've always had that respect for guns and law enforcement. And when I'm out today, in fact, just the other day, Monday, I was able to do a ride-along with a CHP officer. And I just wanted them to know that I have their backs, that I have an understanding of family behind the scenes and the hours and what goes into, that type of a profession. But that's how that's how the children were raised, and moved over to Contra Costa about 10 years ago. I followed my daughter over here, and so never thought that I would become involved in anything like politics, but eventually what started it was Common Core. When Common Core started to come out in 2015, I thought, this is crazy, this can't be. So I got a...
Common Core referring to the education standards that were implemented nationally.
And so I got a clipboard from somebody and was standing out in front of a dollar store getting certificates or getting signatures. And so that was kind of the very beginning of it. And here I am today.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I saw that you've been involved in Republican politics here in Contra Costa.
Yes.
So just talk a little bit about the organizations that you've been part of and what you've done in the past.
President of East Contra Costa Republican Women for almost 5 years. In that time, I was able to become a GOP delegate. And in 2022, I was asked by some Patriots if I would consider being the write-in candidate for Congressional District 10, and I thought, oh my goodness, So had a 20-day campaign, write-in. I have a very long Italian name. You have to spell it correctly. And in spite of 20 days, I got over 1,600 write-in votes.
Yeah,
so
I saw
that
that.
was like, wow.
That was impressive.
Yeah, it was. And supposedly in California, right now, it's the highest number of congressional candidates since I think the jungle primary write-in votes. So did well and thought, I'll just tuck that away and see what happens in 2024. And I just knew I was going to run in 2024.
Sure.
And we had how many candidates? There was DeSaulnier and 5 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it was a full ticket.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the split. I'm curious to see what you think your chances are, because as you know, in our primary, DeSaulnier got 65% of the total vote.
Right.
And the rest of us split the other 35%.
Exactly.
However, 2 years ago, he had 84% in the primary, so he has come down a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was against a Green Party candidate, so it's kind of difficult to make the comparison.
The Green Party, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that.
So let's go into your general political philosophy, which is putting people first. You talk a lot about God, family, life, and country, and representing the interests of the people in Contra Costa and Alameda and Washington, because obviously you don't feel that that's being done right now, likely with DeSaulnier. So, and I was looking at I think it was the Antioch Herald article that wrote, she believes we deserve clean air, pure water, safe food, freedom of speech, and balanced budgets. She vows to stand for freedom, truth, and the flag. She will not stand for tyranny, injustice, and lawlessness. With corruption at the highest levels in government and political parties, she invites others to join her in reclaiming the freedoms that are being taken from them and securing a future and hope for their children and grandchildren. This goes back to you talking about freedom being at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
So go ahead and talk about why you decided to run last time, and got your write-in signatures, and why you are running again this year.
Last time, the picture wasn't as clear. It was just so short, 20 days. It was like, oh my goodness, you have to get your signatures and get your name out there as quickly as you can. Had more time to think about 2024. And we see the direction our country's going in. And I do have a concern that we're on the precipice and we could very well lose America as we grow closer and closer to even election day. More and more things are coming out. And I feel that if we don't change the course, that people are, I think that for a lot of, well, first of all, my concern is for our securities, personal, financial, national, and border. And it's about putting people first, but it's also the children. I see what is happening in the schools, and that's a great concern for everyone. Also, the censorship and what happened during COVID, the lockdown was so severe, and it's like, these are freedoms that we should decide ourselves, where we want to put our children, what we want to put into our body. So it's all part of losing our rights. It's freedom, and it's even gun control. I am against gun control. So I am for our inalienable rights. I have a biblical worldview, and so I weigh everything with, I'll be very honest with you, Joe, against the Word of God, because the Lord comes first, for God, for life, for family, for country. And so I see things the way I would want to treat people, the way I would want them to treat me. I would want to vote on something that I know is going to protect my child as well as your child. I would want to see our country moving in a direction where we have the reckless spending, what they want to, spend money on. And we have no business being in another foreign country fighting their war. So I just see the freedoms of America being pulled apart and eroded, and I would like to do the best I can to keep those intact so that my legacy, my inheritance, which is my children and your children, will be there for them. It's a gift called freedom, but it's not free. We have to fight for it.
Yeah, agree. And so now let's go into the specific issues, sort of one by one. And I'll start with the issues that you seem to have brought up first and foremost on your website and in the various articles. And we'll just start with women's rights. I noticed that you had put up, I guess, a scorecard of some things that DeSaulnier has voted either for or against lately, and then you gave him F ratings based on some of them. One of them was actually women's rights. And because apparently he voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act.
Yes.
And you also wrote on one of your, I guess, mailers that you want to protect female privacy and fairness in sports and enforce biological competition. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and just talk a little bit about women and transgender issues.
Well, I think what DeSaulnier has on his website doesn't really reflect what his voting record is in Washington, D.C. And so the big topic now is girls in sports, biological males wanting to be a part of that. And you have a daughter, so you would surely know that I don't want a male in my granddaughter's toilet area, shower area, locker room where they can watch her dress or undress. That's just against decency. And I would think that's what most mothers and fathers would want for their daughters. Not to mention the unfairness of the competition, because you could give a man as much estrogen as you deem fit to turn him into a woman. It will never happen. It will never happen. He will always have the strength of a man. They may want to change his appearance, but inwardly, that cannot be changed. That's what I believe. So it's the unfairness of the competition in the sports. But for our opponent to even imagine the allowing of another sex in their toilet area, their bathroom area, their shower area, it's like it just does not make sense. It's not common sense.
Yeah, and I will say that I generally agree with you on this issue, and that it shouldn't be too difficult to make other accommodations where you don't have to mix, transgender.
But it's almost like they want to force it.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's just not common sense.
Sure. Then let's just go straight into education related to those matters too, because that came up on your website and some of your bullet points. You wrote, leave our children alone, stop mutilating and grooming, stop the Sacramento perverse legislation from spreading. And then you also want to protect parents' rights with no compromise. So go ahead and talk a little bit about the issues, particularly here in California with the proposition, or I guess it was an Assembly Bill, AB 1955.
1955.
Yeah, which isn't a federal issue, but there could potentially be ways that the federal government could impact some of these issues. Go ahead and talk about your beliefs here and what does and does not belong in our education system.
Just again, going back to common sense for the AB 1955, removing the rights of a parent where a teacher, a school can keep anything that's going on in the classroom from the parent. It's not common sense. It's not logical, but I know that's their goal. And as far as overall, my gut feeling is that I cannot compromise on some issues, that I cannot call good evil and evil good. So if I see something going on in a classroom, the ideology, I call it perverse ideology because it comes up against what we scripturally know to be right and true, and what common sense will tell us, and that I believe this ideology that is being done in the schools, it's more of an indoctrination rather than an education. And again, these are my thoughts, my opinions, my words, that kind of harsh, but that what I think is taking place is that it's more of a stealing of their innocence and a raping of their minds because of what they're putting in the children starting in pre-K. And the books, have you seen the books that are in the school libraries? And there was one father who was reading something at his school board, and the school board said, stop, I don't want to hear that. And the father said, it's in a book that you're giving to the children as part of curriculum. So I think it's just slowly wanting to go in to the children, taking over their minds and removing the parents from the equation. Mm-hmm. Be it medical decisions, curriculum decisions. And I think that's what's taking place. It's part of the breakdown of our culture, removing the nucleus of the family, taking the parents out of it, and letting the schools run the show, more or less. I saw a high school graduation, and the very last thing that the principal said to the students and the entire people that were there was, remember this, you belong to us. And I thought, whoa, that's scary. No, those children do not belong to the community. They belong to their parents.
Okay.
So I will fight for parental rights.
Fair enough. And it sounds like you want essentially all of those, some people would call them political issues or ideology issues, pushed out of the classroom and focusing back on rigorous academic curricula.
Absolutely. Okay. Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah. And when I was running, my position on this was basically the same thing, and bringing up these issues in the context of a social studies class, like for example, gay rights, I was okay with bringing that up in an academic curriculum from that sort of a context and a historical perspective and teaching about it. But yeah, anything beyond that and pushing the ideology, I was against that too.
It's just too much. They don't need that.
Sure.
And so much of it goes back to the parents. Let the parents teach the children about sex, the things they're teaching the kids today. And a lot of teachers will deny it. But okay, where's it coming from? If it's not starting in the classrooms, where is it coming from? Because it's not coming from the homes. It's coming from the class, it's going into the classroom. The children are taking it from the classroom and then bringing it home. And then they go back to the classroom and say, I feel like a boy today and mommy isn't affirming me. Oh my goodness. So the ideology is perverse.
Okay. So sticking generally along these lines and kind of going back to a women's rights issue, we'll just go straight into it, which is abortion.
Yep.
I know that with your religious background and reading some of your materials that you're pretty pro-life, but you also wrote maintaining parental medical freedoms was one of your priorities. And so I think those two are referring to different things. I don't know, can you describe your general position on that and then what you meant by maintaining parental medical freedom, which some people would consider abortion a medical freedom?
I consider that to be the vaccines.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so that I think the whole vaccine mandate was, I wasn't for it, not at all.
Yeah, and I noticed too that one of your scorecards, you were talking about DeSaulnier voting against the Freedom for Healthcare Workers Act, which was removing the COVID-19 vaccination mandates in healthcare settings. Mm-hmm. Because apparently there must be a law or provision right now that in order for a health organization to receive funding from Medicare, that the staff has to be vaccinated.
Yeah, see, all of that is like, that's more than we can deal with.
Sure.
It's just, it's like you had said, it's okay to read about gay rights as part of what the culture is going through now, but when you start shoving it down someone's throat, it's a different matter.
Okay. So medical freedom in the form of vaccinations and
That's yes.
along those lines.
Yes, and it's up to the parent to decide what goes in and out of that child. Whether we agree or not, it's up to the parent. I see now where DeSaulnier was putting something out. He wants to write a bill or something. I'm just kind of recalling this, where he's concerned about food allergies in the schools. And I'm thinking to myself, that's none of your business. That's taking government and growing government. We want to shrink government. We want to be back to we the people. And if there's something going on with food allergies, the parents will take care of that. It's like they're wanting to step in and invade too much of our lives. And
now that you mentioned that, I actually do recall one of my daughter's friends saying that she had to get tested for the various allergies.
Sure.
And I don't think it was for a public school. It might have been a private school. Mm-hmm. Just because there are so many allergies around. I don't know what the principle was.
Well, there are children now have food allergies. But why is that, Joe? Look what's happening with, we talk about clean, safe food, clean air, and pure water.
Yeah, and that's definitely on my list.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about RFK and Nicole Shanahan joining Trump's ticket, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So I just do want to go back and stay with this just for another minute. So you are pro-life. I just want to...
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And then I'm curious then...
But it's up to the woman. I mean, the woman can decide, but also when I say they, I'm talking about the left, or they want to call it women's health. I disagree. That's a poor choice of word. It's not health.
Sure. So from
bottom line, it's birth control.
Got it.
Yeah.
Because all I really care about are policies in the end, what policies the legislators are going to put in place, because ultimately that's the only thing that affects voters. I'm curious then as to your take on Trump's position, which is that he did appoint justices to the Supreme Court to reverse Roe v. Wade, and now it's at the states, and he says that's where it's going to be left. And I don't know if any federal legislation regarding abortion were brought to his desk if he were to become president, that he would sign it. So I genuinely want to know if this is an issue that would be a priority of yours in Washington, D.C. if you were elected, or... Because I have a feeling there's a very big split in the Republican Party now, because they know that this issue tends to be a political liability among large demographics.
I don't, because I stand for truth, that I don't have a problem saying that I am for life, that I have seen, when I was carrying my children, we didn't have that technology. But I have seen my grandchildren in the ultrasounds to see that little blip of life, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's a heartbeat, it's alive, and I can't get that out of my mind. So I believe that life begins with conception.
Okay.
And I don't have a problem saying it, and I don't want that to get in my way. If you agree with me, fine. If you don't, that's your business. That's okay. But I'm not going to change my stand on that. And I forgot the other part of your question, Joe, was... Yeah,
I guess I was just basically curious on your take on what appears
President
to be
Trump.
A coming split in the Republican Party, because they seem to be wanting to push pro-life legislation, but especially with Trump's hard take on this belongs at the states and that's where it's going to stay. I feel like that's not going to be a priority among even a Republican-controlled House or Senate if they retake the Senate in the election.
It's not a priority for me.
Okay.
But I have no problem standing up for it.
Sure.
But it won't be one of my priorities is our security, which is what's going on in the border. Because if we don't stop what is happening, none of the other things are going to matter. It's not going to matter if we have potholes, It's not going to matter about this tax or that tax. If we can't stop the direction our country is going in, it will be mute.
Yeah. So let's go straight into the border then, because that was on my list and it was on your website and your flyers as well. You said that Mark DeSaulnier had voted against the SAVE Act, which is the Safeguard American Voters Eligibility Act, which would put penalties on non-citizens who intentionally registered to vote. And you also support voter ID, paper ballots, and same-day voting.
Yes.
So go ahead and explain why you have that position and feel strongly about it.
Yeah, voter integrity, that's, I know we can do ballot harvesting, that's okay. But yeah, I have a concern about the voter integrity. I have a concern about mail-in ballots. I tried to help with something called Patriot Force, which was going and cleaning up the voter rolls. I'm seeing for myself that doing a mail out that I'm doing, you should see how much mail I get back. Non-sufficient address, vacant, no longer lives here. So the voter rolls, I don't believe are properly kept up in California. I don't know about other states. So that is a concern, absolutely.
I did see a little bit of that myself when I was running, and I actually had a supporter of mine send me a picture. She had been mailed 3 ballots.
Yes.
And supposedly the county will take care of that if somebody were to send all 3 in, but it's a little bit concerning when you see things like that happen.
Yeah, it is. I've had people, when I was president, get 3 ballots, one with a middle initial, one with, different, and it's like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on?
Sure. Going into the border policy a little bit more, obviously Trump is very strong on closing the border, and he also supports a mass deportation program. Are you on board with all of those? Okay.
I'd like to go back to DeSaulnier. There was just a new bill, 7909, that was voted on, where it said, I think it's called the Women Against Violence Act, and has to do with the border. If any illegal is found guilty of raping a child or a woman, should that illegal be deported? Well, how do you think he voted?
No. Yeah.
No deportation. And I thought to myself, what man? And usually I'm very careful what I say about my opponent. I don't even use his name, but this is general. What father would allow that? That if the child is raped, that the father wouldn't want some type of punishment for that perpetrator, especially if it's guilty. Yet he voted no deportation. So that means that person stays in our country. We end up paying for that person, lodging, food. Look at all the benefits we're giving to the illegals now. Our veterans are not treated as well as the illegals are. So that's something DeSaulnier stood up for. He also voted that it was okay in his no vote, but that it was okay for an illegal to assault a police officer. No punishment. He also voted with a no answer that it was okay for an illegal to vote in a federal election in Washington, D.C. What? He's giving away our rights as a parent and as a citizen.
And I've invited him onto the podcast. I haven't heard anything back from his campaign yet, but I would invite him to respond to those. I do know sometimes that in Washington, D.C., they will put bills up for a political show, and there could have been other things in the bill that he was against, but if there was, like I said, I would be more than happy to have him explain.
Bottom line, using that language.
Sure, understood.
That's part of my, I will not compromise. I will not call good evil or evil good. If you have it, if it's there, you can't vote for all of it. If there's one piece of it that will cause harm to one of our children or to our liberties, our freedoms, our securities.
True. And going back to the cost of supporting the illegal immigrants, I know that is becoming an increasing issue as voters are seeing how much money is being spent. I know here in California, it's obviously a state level law, but we're paying for their health care to the tune of at least $3 billion a year, it appears. And then the state legislature did just pass that bill, went all the way up to Gavin Newsom's desk, allowing illegal immigrants to be part of the program to give $150,000
Right.
for a down payment on a home. And Newsom vetoed it. To his credit, I think if that would have went through, that would have caused outrage.
You know what, Joe? It's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
Okay.
That's before us.
Sure. Going back to one of the issues that you brought up a couple of times now, which is safe water, safe food, and seeing how prominent of an issue it has become really over just the last 2 months because of RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan, especially now joining Trump's ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I've always cared about this issue, and I try to be very clean in my eating. I try to not eat anything that has any kind of processed ingredients, and I keep telling my daughter every day and my family every day how important it is, and they were kind of brushing it off. But with the recent interviews that, for example, Tucker Carlson did with Casey and Callie Means, I think it's sinking in with more people, and my sister is on board now, which I'm very glad to see because she has 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and talk about clean water, safe food, and what needs to be done here, and how it relates to, if it does, agriculture, pharmaceutical industry, healthcare.
My grandson's 14, and he's reading labels. So this is important now. There's ingredients in food. We have no idea what some of it is. And I believe, again, this is my belief, that our food supply is being tampered with, and that our water is, not the purest, but we need more water conservation. And also, I agree with Robert Kennedy. He said he would take the fluoride out of water. That's been thought for years to be a problem. And where did all of this stem from? The putting of chemicals, even with Vaseline, petroleum jelly. Petroleum, they find now is very harmful, but yet it's been a part of a lot of different drugs and things. And most of our medication comes from China. Can we trust anything coming out of China?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm concerned about medicine. I'm concerned about water. I'm concerned about what they're doing to our food. And I'm concerned about our air. I believe there are chemtrails. And most people look at me and roll their eyes. And they'll call me a conspiracy theorist. But I have pictures on my phone over my home. And it wasn't that they did it over my home, but it's in the air. A complete X. Now you please tell me that is not 2 contrails from 2 jets. And if you watch this chemtrail, when it's coming out of the plane, it looks small. But if you sit there and you watch it, you'll see it grow and grow and grow and grow. Well, I believe it's going all over our crops, because living in Oakley, I have more rural area. We have a lot of ranchers, and that chemical, I believe, is coming on our soil, on our children in the school playgrounds, on our homes, on us. And all of that chemical, aluminum, barium, strontium, I think is the other one. They have many. That's going into food, water, and we take it in. We're ingesting it in. And you wonder why children have allergies and why so many other people have allergies. It's purposely being placed into the atmosphere, into our water, into our food. They have had findings of snow on the top of Mount Shasta with aluminum in it. Who is going up on Mount Shasta and putting aluminum in snow?
That interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's something that you agree with or researching or...
Well, I will just say that a lot of Americans are generally distrusting the government more every single day, and a lot of the things that we've been told were true, we're finding out are not.
Absolutely.
And if you just look at the general health of Americans, which is that 74% of us are overweight or obese, and 60% of us have some kind of chronic illness, those statistics speak for themselves, and there's obviously something in our food, in our water, in the air,
Absolutely.
something making all of us chronically ill, and that needs to be dealt with, especially given how much it is costing Americans to support the healthcare industry every year. It's the largest part of our budget, which is
Yeah.
one of the
Big
things
pharma.
that RFK brought to light, and I
Right.
began to look into it, and I was actually surprised.
Yes. And he speaks right from his heart. And it's an effort for him to speak. I've seen him in person, even with his voice. But he has done his research, and I do agree. And what's happening to our children after the immunizations, the autism. When I was raising my children, my youngest is 50. When I was raising my children, autism was like almost unheard of. Now it's so common. And why is that?
Yeah, there's definitely a
Why
reason.
is that?
And RFK Jr. alleges that it's been covered up, that this stuff has been known for a long time.
I agree.
And I just saw the other day that Robert Redfield, the former CDC director, maybe he was the FDA director, I apparently wrote an op-ed, maybe in the Wall Street Journal, and he had met with Kennedy in person. Kennedy reported that Redfield basically told him that it was right about everything regarding the vaccinations. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That someone of that stature would come out and basically say, yeah, RFK is right about it.
Also, with the where you talk about chronic illnesses and such, look at what's happened since the vaccine. That the cancer, the people that are being diagnosed with cancer now, it's increased like 500%. Where is that coming?
Okay.
Out.
So let's continue down through some of the issues. I want to cover a few things that I didn't see a lot of on your website and your materials that are of concern to most Americans. One you actually already brought up a little bit, which is foreign conflicts and war. I just want your general position on Ukraine and the Israel-Palestine conflict, and how American foreign policy should be handled, if any, differently than it is now.
So I think America has no business in Ukraine. That I think most Americans would not want to see their son or daughter die in a ditch over in Ukraine for their issues. I saw Mark DeSaulnier at one of his town halls. I did go to one, where he said, the best thing you can do is to keep us in Ukraine, because their war is our war. And the people got up and clapped, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is not our war. And why are we over there even in the first place? I believe it's for other reasons. I believe that there's things there that America has spent taxpayer money on that they should not have. And that I do believe there is money laundering going on with Ukraine. Where is all that money going? We have spent billions on that country.
Yeah, if you look at the amount of money that the U.S. has spent supposedly on helping Ukraine fight this war, it's about the same as Russia has spent. And for that, it doesn't seem like there's any progress being made at all. And going back to what you were referring to, we've given money to Ukraine in the past, is that referring to essentially the U.S. government appearing to have gone into Ukraine in 2014 to overthrow the democratically elected president and sort of change the regime over there? to be more anti-Russian, because that's what I read and was RFK's position as well.
Yeah. I think America, has its nose in a lot of people's business, and we don't need to, because if we're putting the people first, if we're putting America first, we're going to take care of America before we worry about that. So we have borders that are wide open that this current administration is not willing to close. They're willing to take more of our taxpayer dollars and send it over to Ukraine, which we really don't know what's going on over there. Hearing that Zelensky is making trips here and buying, homes in America, it's like, what's going on here? And going back to, and now going to Israel. Israel is America's closest ally. There's no other country in the world that was basically founded with God as the creator. And so aside from that tie, Israel is, I've been there 4 times, so I have this love for Israel. I may not agree with the government, but we are called by God to pray for Israel, pray for Jerusalem. It's just a mandate that I accept. But also on my own, I care for Israel. I care for the people. And what happened on October 7th was, I can't even imagine. And Israel they have a right to protect their country. And this latest thing with the UN saying that Israel does not have a right to protect itself against Gaza, oh my gosh, who are they to tell this country who they can or cannot defend themselves from? It's all getting out of hand.
Okay, so very strong supporter of Israel.
Yeah.
Pushing back on the other side of that issue, a lot of people would say that Israel's response to what happened was disproportionate. And I don't know exactly what the number is now of Palestinian deaths, but I have a feeling it's in excess of 40,000 by now,
And
compared to the 1,000 approximately
that died
Israelis.
on October 7th.
Curious on your take on that pushback.
Right.
Because there's a very large community of people that are defecting from the Democrat Party on this issue.
And I could see that, because it's like way off balance, the retaliation. I get that.
Some compare it to what happened with the U.S. in 2001 after 9/11. Then we went into Iraq under false pretenses.
Right.
Not saying that what happened in Israel was false. We know it wasn't.
Right.
But the disproportionate response in killing literally hundreds of thousands of Iraqis through both direct war and starvation and destruction of their infrastructure.
And you know what I think about that the Iraqi part, about 9/11? I think the same people are funding like both sides of the war. So it was a win-win for them. They were going to make money no matter what.
Sure. So you think it's the military-industrial complex at work?
I do.
And could it be at work in Israel?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Is that okay to say that?
We'll see. I don't think we'll get shut down on YouTube. Totally fine with me.
Yeah, but you can edit that, right?
We can, but I just like to let people see how people are thinking on all of these issues. And nothing is black and white. And a lot of times what people think initially on something ends up not being the truth. So we don't know. And I have very nuanced views on all of these issues, including Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia.
And I can tell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that Vin Crudiventi brought up, who's running for U.S. Congress in the district just south of us against Eric Swalwell, was that he believes the executive branch power to go into international conflicts is overused, and that Congress needs to put measures in place that prevent the executive branch from unilaterally exercising, effectively going to war in Ukraine, Russia, in Israel, Palestine, or at least massively supporting those regimes without congressional approval.
And I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, fair enough. Because that's my general belief, is that the people which means the representation through Congress should be more in charge of determining if we're going to give funding or go to war in various places, as opposed to just the War Powers Act or the executive branch making decisions.
There's government is far too big.
Sure. Let's go a little bit into the cost of living. You talk about controlling our financial future and stopping reckless spending. The biggest issue right now for Californians and Americans is inflation and the cost of living. Many things are becoming out of reach. The American dream is being destroyed. Middle class is being hollowed out. I don't think anyone would argue with that. So is it just the reckless spending that has gotten us to this point? Is it energy? Is it supply chains? The Democrats seem to be blaming corporate greed right now. I just want your general take on what's caused it and how we get out of this cycle of increasing costs.
The Democrats are blaming corporate greed?
Yeah, in many cases, they're saying that, for example, food companies are recording record profits. So one of the policies that Kamala seemed to be touting was that she'll put in effectively price controls on certain goods. If you can just kind of describe in general, like, both what you think the causes of the inflation and how we begin to bring food costs and housing costs down, if we even can.
If we even can.
Yeah.
So I think what President Trump said he would do on day one would be to close the border and to open the Keystone Pipeline. And I agree with that because thousands of jobs were lost in just that one act of Biden to come in and close that. And I think that so many jobs have been shut down. And this was what President Trump was talking about, bringing manufacturing back to America. We've outsourced too much. Everything comes from China. We've got to start bringing it back. I would like to see our drugs and medicines come back home where we would manufacture them ourselves. So I think if we could bring industries back, create the jobs, that would give people more money monthly. I don't know how some of these families are able to feed their families with the cost of everything, because food is just going up and up. We know that.
Yep.
And gas.
Going back to your point about the Keystone Pipeline,
Yep.
Trump and a lot of Republicans would argue that one of the drivers of the inflation is energy costs. And so increasing our domestic production of natural gas, oil would be a good thing. Vin Crudiventi's position was that we should increase the production of all forms of energy, renewables, nuclear, oil, and gas, and then export anything that we don't use. Because right now we are importing a substantial amount of oil. And so logically, it doesn't make sense to be doing that when we could produce it ourselves here when we have to use it anyways. Right.
And so I believe that when God created this world, there is enough oil and water for our provision to last indefinitely. All we need to do is tap on it. And the fact...
I believe that we do need to move towards sustainable green tech energy long term, though.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So, because I know that we have it here, that we just need to touch it, need to tap on it, and for those things not to be, it's almost like, why don't you want to use what we have? Why don't you want to take what is natural here on the earth and use it? Why can't we make America self-sufficient? Why do we have to go elsewhere to bring what we already have? Why are you doing that? Are you doing that to make money? Is there some kind of an agreement? Is there something we don't know about? That's not putting the people first. That's not putting America first. And I know that's what Trump says, and I'm not trying to mimic him, but it's true. We need to put the people here first. That is one of the things I'm running on. So there's many things. We can provide more jobs. And the energy part, I'm hearing more and more about nuclear now, that it's the way they're the carriers, right? What do they call them?
Yeah, the aircraft carriers are powered by nuclear, and submarines.
And it's supposed to be very clean. So these are things that I need to know more about, and I'm willing to, but I think we need to use what we have. Just to rely on turbines and wind and solar, even that solar is going to have a lifespan to it. I understand there's batteries or something attached to that. Well, where are those going to go when they need to be recharged? Where are they going to go when the life of them is over? How are we going to recycle all this? They want to take us away from gas cars and make everything electric. What are you going to do with everything you're taking away from us, that you want to take away from us? We're going to have huge heaps, a whole state full of old water heaters, old cars, old gas stoves. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
One of the pushbacks about California's very pressing green tech mandates is that we don't have the infrastructure set up to convert everything to electricity right now. And so it needs to happen more naturally over time. As you said, you had watched Mike Greer's interview with me. That was his belief that we are working towards that, but we need to let it happen naturally and not force government mandates to push it on a timeline that isn't sustainable and that will continue to drive up costs.
Right. And it said that for the electric vehicles, they want to make airplanes electric, trucks electric, that the batteries would be so heavy, they would have to almost retrofit every bridge in America. I don't know about that. It's what I've heard, but all this electricity, and we don't have the grid for it. We just don't. And where are you going to do power stations? How are you going to be able to take a family trip and stop for 3 hours and charge your car and then go on to the next state? Is the next state going to have a charging facility as plentiful as the state I just exited? I mean, this stuff is just like, I don't think it's planned. I don't think it's well planned.
Yeah, I think the private market can figure that out. Tesla's done a pretty good job making sure that its customers are able to travel wherever they want to and be able to power up in a reasonable amount of time. The government mandating things, I'm generally against that. I'm fine with them encouraging it, providing some incentives here and there, but it's a matter of pace of the adoption. And the one thing that I always come back to, which are studies I've read about climate, is that India and China aren't adopting green tech at the rate that we are. And even if we were to push everything to green, it's only going to alter the increase in temperature by a fraction of a degree. So we need to figure out something. But I think there is enough bright people in the private sector that can figure this out.
Yes.
And I do agree with nuclear.
Okay. Also, you said there's enough bright people. That goes back to even the vaccine mandates and things. Let the people decide what they need to put in and out of their body. There's enough bright people that can make logical decisions about.
Okay. Going along with your people first, obviously you believe that there's a massive amount of corruption in government, probably at all levels. How do you combat that?
Good question. Good question. Got to get the bad guys out.
Yeah, so putting good people in who have character and won't compromise. You seem to be a no compromise politician on a lot of these issues.
Life is a compromise. Marriage is a compromise. Children are a compromise. That's not the compromise I'm talking about. I'm talking about we know what's right. We know what's wrong. We all do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it behind closed doors.
Thank you.
And so I think the amount of corruption is so intense that we haven't really even tapped on it yet.
What about term limits? Because this seems to be something that both politicians and the public agree on, but it never seems
Absolutely. DeSaulnier's seeking his 6th term. It's too much. It's too long. They're wanting to be career. To be in Washington 30 or 40 years, they go in not wealthy, and they come out very wealthy.
Okay. And the final issue that I guess we'll bring up, because you brought it up a few times, but I just want to get some clarification on a few points, is the Second Amendment. You said you're against gun control. I'm curious where you would stand on certain things like red flag laws, where if a person has mental health problems or some sort of history that could predispose them to harming themselves or others, if and where the government should step in to try to prevent school shootings or the Trump assassin. These people clearly have issues, and
They do.
some of them have come up on the radar many times before. And is this an area where there might be some kind of controls put in place?
Why does it have to be government control on guns? Why, we have our local police, which is another issue. I'm not soft on crime.
Yeah.
Our police have, I'll go back to what we were saying, but our police have handcuffs on. We need to take the handcuffs off of them, let them go back to arresting. This $950 limit, all that has to go. We're creating the problem, and it's not the gun that's causing the issue. It's the person that's pulling the trigger. Yes, there are mental issues, but if we listen to enough of the garbage that people are hearing every day, why wouldn't people become mentally crazy? It's insanity, Joe, what is happening when you think about it. It's insanity what they're trying to push into our children's minds in the classrooms. It's insanity what Congress is voting on. Some of the reckless spending, especially in the science areas, spending money on injecting monkeys with estrogen to see if they turn into transgender. Some of this stuff is absurd. Spending $1 million on transgender clothing for homeless. It's just, I'm sort of spouting out there, but it's insanity. It's just the best word I can come up with for what's going on. Why wouldn't there be mental health issues? But as far as gun control, yes, if there's a problem with someone, they shouldn't be owning a gun, but why does it have to be government control? Why can't it be local police removing the weapons from the home, confiscating them from the home, placing them somewhere for a time being or whatever? But I don't see where it has to be government control.
Sure. Well, technically, like the law enforcement agencies, that's part of government. So it sounds like you'd be in favor of some sort of a mechanism where if an issue comes up.
But it's more local.
Sure.
It's not Washington, D.C.
legislative issue.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I'm all for taking the government and bringing it back to we the people, not growing it.
Sure. Okay. In conclusion, as we talked about earlier, DeSaulnier has historically done very well in this district. It tends to lean left, usually somewhere between 65-35 and even all the way up to 79% in the last election, although that was against a Green Party candidate. So what do you say to independent voters and Democrats who you will have to pull over in order to win the district and take it from DeSaulnier?
Well, for those that are unhappy with him right now, and there are many because I've spoken with them, that whoever the candidate would have been, you or me, but for now it is that I am the only one right now electorally and legally who can remove him from his office. And so if you're wanting change in Contra Costa, then you would want to vote for me. As you mentioned before, I stand for truth and freedom. My yes will be yes, and my no will be an unwavering no. I love America. I am passionate about family. I want you to treat me as I would treat you, that I will promise and pledge to put the people first in all things, and that I think Contra Costa, I think DeSaulnier has massaged and conditioned everybody for a long time. And it's time for a breakthrough. It's time for a new start. That America's moving too close with the precipice. And I want to bring us back from that. And there's too many laws. There's too many regulations. Everything needs to be reduced and taken back so that we, the people, feel like we have more of a say in our government, and that we can remove that distrust from government, because that's what we have now. I don't know of anybody that trusts the government.
Well, agreed. Okay, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best in this last approximately 1 month of campaigning.
I know.
Okay.
We're near the end.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
And God bless America, this land that we love. So what do you think, how it's going?
What do you mean? What do I think how it's going?
Yeah, I mean, how the county's moving, how America's moving with what's going on. And I mean, the UN, we didn't touch on the UN, but there's just so much going on with that new Pact for the Future that they're voting on. Did you hear about that? Where they want a biometric, digital ID, all of us. Well, I wanted to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, I haven't read too much about that.
look into it.
Okay.
It's called Pact for the Future. UN just voted on it. They got together September 22nd and 23rd, and Biden is all for it.
Really?
So if you...
So that's wanting to put everybody effectively into an international database?
Exactly. And if you don't be a good citizen, they can turn off your money. They can not allow you to enter any public transportation. They'll keep you off of public roads. You won't be able to go shopping. I mean, it's getting really intense with the UN.
Yeah, one thing I do need to do more research into is how agreeing with a UN charter, something like that, would impact our own laws, because I know that as far as sort of treaties and things like that go, Congress has to approve them. So I would assume that there would be a safeguard against things like that with our Congress.
I would hope.
But I don't know how those processes work.
But,
That's an area
you know, Biden just tried to do something without Congressional, and I can't think of what it was. It was about the WHO, WHO and the WTO, that they'll be giving full charge over all pandemics. And this is something that they're also talking about. That so yeah, there's a lot going on with the UN.
I do know there are lots of abuses of power in the executive branch where they'll just agree or go along with something, and then it takes a while for the courts effectively to stop them, because then there has to be a legal challenge brought against that by Congress or by an affected party. And in the interim, there can be damage done. I know lots of administrations have done things like that in the past, knowing that it's going to take months for the legal system to stop it, basically.
Right. Something else at DeSaulnier, I have my report card, I'll leave one with you. Something else DeSaulnier did is he voted that it was okay for the banks to take, to put surveillance on our bank accounts. I think it's HR.
Oh, to monitor what kinds of purchases we're making, like firearms and things like that?
Well,
I've seen proposals for that.
They want to just do, it's the installing of the central bank digital currency, where they'll take eventually control over, and they call it tokenization, where they will eventually have control over your mortgages, your assets, and they even listed furniture. But it's moving too fast. It's going too quick into the one world, one religion, one money, all that. And we know it's biblical. It is going to at some point take place. But is this moving too soon, too fast?
And this is one of the reasons why I ran for office, because it is progressing very quickly, and it seems like the values and ideals that really both parties used to stand for were more principled previously, and everything is changing.
Right.
In my opinion, not for the good.
Yeah.
And that's why I ran.
And so I don't think I shared this, but I'm a Patriot first. I happen to have an R after my name, but my allegiance is not to the Republican Party, not at all. Because if you tick me off, I'll leave you. So I'm a Patriot first. I love America. I love my family. I love freedom. And I want my children to have that when I'm not here. And when I look into their eyes, I say, you're worth fighting for. So that's why I'm doing this. Not because it's on my bucket list. It's because I love what I have, and I want to cherish it and take care of it.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And I can't stand the two-party system. That's
Yes,
why I try
me
to
either.
break it.
Yeah, really. I think it's really one anyway, bottom line.
In many aspects, yes.
Yeah.
It's much easier for any special interest to control a system when there are only two parties,
Yes.
because then you only have two people to buy.
Right.
And that happens too often.
And that's that word, buy.
I put out a lot of content about how if we had even 20 independents in the House, that would throw off all of their math, and you can't just affect the leadership of one party or both parties to get something through.
Also, I didn't get to mention that I am endorsed by the American Independent Party.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am endorsed. I was not endorsed by the GOP in primary, but I am now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I'm not running under that endorsement that I need it. Not at all.
Yeah. I'm not a labels voter.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me. I think a lot of people are voters based on the label of the party instead of looking at the policies. And
Yes.
that's why things are eroding quickly, because both parties know that, and they take advantage of that. They will do things behind closed doors that their voters don't know they're doing.
Wow.
And thinking, I will be able to get away with this because all of these people are locked in as Democrats, or all of these people are locked in as Republicans.
Yep. And so my candidate statement kind of says I'm not part of the establishment. I'm not, and I think that's why I wasn't endorsed first time around, because I'm in two central committees, and I've had people approach me and say, we'll endorse you, but we don't like the way you're voting. And I'll say, don't tell me how to vote.
And
So I'm just running as a patriot, really,
sure.
who has an R after her name. But will I lie down and die for the Republicans? No way. Will I lie down and die for my country and my family? Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you counter the narrative that the Democrat Party always tries to paint on right-wing candidates, which is that they're crazy and MAGA? Because that just they seem to try to put a label on the opposing party all the time to make it easier for them to manipulate voters.
I was thinking of that driving here today. I am against the system and all that it's standing for, because I think that it's choking the lives of the people in our nation. I think the Democrats are against Trump. That's their enemy. It's all about Trump. Trump, Trump, Trump. And when I was at the Art and Wine Festival this weekend, people, they mocked me. They laughed at me. And they were like It was crazy the way they're Democrats. They're like, it's insane how some of them are responding. And I just think you're really not against me. You're against the picture that the media has painted about the party that I'm in or President Trump. That it's not logical. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
They're against Trump more than they.
It's very difficult to counter that narrative when somebody believes it, or depending on what media they listen to,
And
whether they're on the right side or the left side.
I don't watch either. I don't watch TV. So if you're constantly, controlled, mind controlled, Trump's a racist, Trump's a this, Trump's a that, that's all that comes out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did notice when I was running, obviously I approached people as an independent and they didn't know what to think. And some of them asked me, did I vote for Trump? Or some are asking me, am I going to vote for Trump? Because that was their singular issue.
yeah,
And I would kind of skirt around it a little bit, because that's not what matters. What matters is not if you like an individual or a personality or don't like them. What matters is the policies that are going to put in place, because
Exactly.
that's what's going to affect you.
exactly. And I'm for the people, and I think DeSaulnier is for the policies because he votes. Because I've gone through, he votes 100% Democrat, no matter what. Swalwell will go, a little here, a little there. DeSaulnier is they can count on him. They can bank on DeSaulnier to back them up. And he's the 21st most conservative, most progressive in Congress. They have him lined up. And this is on a congressional website with AOC.
Yeah, I brought up that same website. I forgot the name of it again.
Yeah.
But with his voting record, at least according to their rankings, he was about the 20th most progressive out of the 200-ish Democrats in the House.
So, guaranteed he'll vote. And I've heard him in town halls where oh my gosh, it's like, you people, you're just like, you're remote controlled or something. You just, whatever he said, they just thought it was so wonderful. He's just got them all massaged and conditioned all these years.
Well, one of my problems, and I was looking at the topics of his town halls, none of the town halls are really open. They always have some kind of a non-controversial topic as a subject, like environment. For example, they don't talk about, he won't have a town hall about cost of living. He won't have a town hall about illegal immigration and the border. He won't have a town hall about Ukraine, Russia, or Israel, Palestine.
No, those
because they don't want to upset.
Yeah.
Because
I
he
think
knows that there is going to be dissent in those.
Right. So here's what happened to the one of the ones I went to. They had the Israel, Gaza were there, the protesters, and they were like, oh, we're going to send you all home unless you settle down. So he didn't like that confrontation.
Yeah.
And on his website, instead of calling an illegal what they are, an illegal, he calls them immigrants. So he skirts the issues. He's like a Santa Claus. He just wants to be known as a good guy. Oh, look at me, I'm a good guy. But he's not speaking truth. He's lying to the people. He's lying to the people.
Yeah.
You look on his website, you will not find one word about how he voted against biological males in girls' sports. Ooh, that's a hot topic. But I want the people to know he voted it's okay. So you get that, mothers and fathers? This guy says it's okay. You want to keep voting him in? He says it's okay for illegals, to beat up a police officer, nothing will happen. It's okay to open the border to fentanyl and sex trafficking. What's happening to the 300,000 missing children? He knows all that. He's not going to talk about that. They're hot topics. I'll talk about it because it's truth. We have to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and I did notice also when there was that supposedly the bipartisan border bill that was brought up in the Senate, which had the authors were both Republicans and Democrats, and then it was pushed into the House to try to get passed. DeSaulnier did comment about how the border bill would have helped increase security at the border, but it was the Republicans' fault. They're the ones who shot it down.
Yes.
And my problem,
He blames us.
I know, is that when Biden got into office, he did have 90 executive actions that he took to basically open up the border, and that Trump had these executive actions in place that had closed the border.
Right.
And when things like that come up, and I think more voters are realizing that that is actually true.
Yes.
But at the time, a lot of people didn't, and they just saw, oh, it's a bipartisan border bill. Why didn't it pass? Because the Republicans stopped it, and Trump wanted it stopped so that the border would continue to be an issue. But that's disingenuous. But you have to really understand what's going on in order to know that it's disingenuous and that the administration can shut down the border
Absolutely.
unilaterally.
Also, one of my big things I wanted to share today, but I went with, with the questions. There is 5, maybe 6 DNA testing bills in Congress that they have not been able to pass. Why is it? Because President Trump had in place DNA testing in 2019. It was very new, but they had the technology, and I think they were trying it out, but when Biden got in, he put a stop to it.
Are you referring to collecting DNA of everybody coming in so that we know?
For the children, for the missing children. There's over 300,000 missing children.
No.
Where are they? Well, I believe I know where they are. They've been sex trafficking out, or else for what they're using children for. But there's no reason why we can't do DNA testing when you see some big ugly man coming across the border pulling a little toddler with him.
I see. You want to make sure that they're family members of
Familial ties.
by traffickers,
Exactly.
whether for labor or sex trafficking.
Right. Familial ties. And that can be done in Congress, and they haven't done it. So who's buying off who, or what's going on? That's something so important. If you're a father and you care about your children, wouldn't you want that in place for all the other children coming in? It's like, don't you have a love in your heart for everybody? Or is your love for greed, for power, for money? Where are your priorities? Those are not my priorities. There's a reason why these bills are not, why we're not able to pass them. And I know it's hard to pass a bill in Congress, but what's going on with some of these things that are for the securities, for the protection, for the people, putting the people first.